Avi Chomsky. There she is. She'll be speaking about immigrant solidarity, amongst other things. She's a professor and coordinator of Latin American Studies at Salem State University. Avi, thank you so much for being here. Please take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all of these wonderful, inspiring talks we've heard so far. And I think you're going to hear a lot of echoes and trying to build on what we've been hearing. So I'm going to talk about four things. One, narratives, picking up on what Alexandria was talking about in terms of media and how we're taught to think about things. What's actually happening with immigration? What can we do? What's going on that we can plug into? And then returning to narratives. And we definitely hear that immigrants take our jobs and all kinds of lies about immigrants, but I really think that underneath it all is a kind of a bigger narrative that connects the discussion about immigration to also discussions about foreign policy, and in particular right now to everything that's happening in Gaza. And this is what I would call the colonial narrative, that that colonized people are dangerous, they're barbarian hordes, and that these embattled bastions of civilization like the Trumpian United States, MAGA, Israel, the old white South Africa, are the only holdouts, and maybe the European countries too think of themselves this way, against these barbarian hordes who are constantly engaging in violence and endangering the lives of these embattled white colonizers wherever they are. And I really think that that immigration is an area where foreign and domestic policy meet. And in some ways, we see this particularly in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, who challenges the colonizers' narrative both on the foreign policy level and on the immigrant level. But this construction of immigrants as these dangerous hordes, and President Trump is constantly using the term invasion, and we're hearing, criminal immigrants are violent, and that narrative even goes beyond the media. It is so pervasive from the moment we are born in this country. It's in all of the movies that we see. It's in the curriculums we have in school. It's just everywhere. It's the air we breathe. So being conscious of that. So much of what has happened so far has gone through executive orders that Trump has implemented. And I could not possibly list them all for you, even if I had an hour, because there are so many and they're just following one on the other. But basically, each one of these, our immigration system deprives people of rights. That is, our immigration system is a system of legal status that deprives humans of legal status and puts them into different categories where they have different rights. So what all of the executive orders are trying to do, and of course, foreigners have fewest rights of all, especially if they're Gazans. What all of these executive orders are trying to do is to push more people into rightlessness, to allow completely lawless enforcement of laws on them where they have no defense, where they have no freedom of speech, where they have basically no rights. They have no ending birthright citizenship, ending temporary protective status, ending refugee programs, turning every immigrant into a criminal, mobilizing the military, putting people in chains, just this denial of rights on every level. And I'm happy to talk about any of the executive orders in more detail, but that just sort of summarizes them. I wanted to spend most of my time here talking about how we fight back, and that I really feel that this is a moment of all hands on deck, so that there's no one right way to fight back, that, as several speakers have said, we're all in different places. We have different capacities. We all need to be fighting back in different ways. But let me just mention some of those ways. One is that everywhere that there are immigrants, there are immigrant rights organizations. And some of those are very local organizations. Some of them are part of national networks, national organizations like the National Network for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, the American Friends Service Committee. So there organizations are doing existing organizations are doing on the local level. A lot of what we're seeing happening in terms of resistance right now is coming not only from these organizations, but also from legal organizations. That is, the executive orders are not exactly laws. They're trying to mobilize different parts of the legal system, but legal challenges to the executive orders and to the policies that are being implemented. And the legal pushback is coming in on two levels. Not all of us are lawyers, not all of us are connected to legal organizations that are doing these things. But one is the support for detained individuals, and the other is trying to stop some of these laws in their tracks. In a lot of ways, this legal struggle is very important, but it's also very ineffective because, as we are seeing, first of all, it's a very slow process. And secondly, the administration is basically steamrolling over legal challenges. So this is bringing us to perhaps a constitutional crisis. I also wanted to talk about mutual aid support because immigrants who are being pushed into rightlessness, their vulnerability and their needs are growing day by day. So immersing yourself in immigrant communities. What is it that people need? Someone mentioned support for families when someone is detained. Who's going to take care of the children? Who's going to feed the children? When somebody can't go to work, when the one worker in the family loses their job, when people are afraid to go to school. So these organizing at the mutual aid level, and there's immigrant rights organizations in every community in the country that is trying to organize that. So plugging into that. Direct action, that is, again, all over the country, organizations are trying to plan for rapid response networks, for trying to actually have people who are able to put themselves on the street in front of ICE trucks, engage in civil disobedience to try to really physically stop what is happening. Obviously, you have to be really well organized for this. It's not something you can just go out and try to do, but there are trainings going on. You can find ways to get involved in this if this is something that you are willing and able to do. Of course, protesting, and I agree absolutely with what India said, that a protest is meaningless unless it has an ask. A protest has to have a goal. But protesting in the streets and bringing the system to a halt, that is, if we actually had enough support, we could bring this system to a halt. And this brings me back to my final thing that I want to mention, which goes back to the narratives question, which is education. That is, we are not strong enough. We can do all of these things, and we need to do all of these things, but we are not strong enough. Much of the country either supports what the president is doing or is just apathetic about what the president is doing, or I should say the administration is doing. So I really think that education and critical literacy, as Alexandria was saying, but going beyond even just the media and really delving into these narratives and educational activities. Of course, I'm a professor, so that's easy for me to say, but I do think that finding ways of changing the narrative at these fundamental levels, that is, we are not going to succeed unless we can grow substantially. And these narratives can change. But that's a big task for us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avi. Scrolling through questions. Okay, I have to get this one to make sense. You talk about people being apathetic. From your experience on the ground working with immigrant communities, what changes the narrative the most for people who are apathetic? Humanizing the immigrants. What can you say about these immigrant communities, about individual human beings, that takes someone from apathetic about these things to caring? Right now, I mean, I'm in Indiana. I mean, my friends, they don't even know about most of the deportations unless I bring it up and have to tell them about it. So how do we take someone from apathetic to being on our side on this?
Well, I have to also say that support for President Trump is not restricted to non-immigrant communities. There is also support for the administration in immigrant communities, so we can't make them monolithic. And apathy is also present in immigrant communities, although I think fear is growing in immigrant communities as it's growing in many places. Again, I don't think there is only one way. You can approach it from the perspective of critical literacy. You can approach it from the perspective of unveiling colonial narratives. I teach a whole class on colonialism where it's like that get to help students see what is a colonial narrative is one of my main goals in the class. Hearing individual stories, meeting people is also part of it, but there's no panacea. There's no one way. And again, to me, it's more like right now we're at all hands on deck. We have to just try everything.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Lots of questions about, are you related to the great Noam Chomsky? Of course. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions on immigration specifically. I'm not seeing anything else right now. In your local community, do you think your local community is representative of what's going on in the rest of the country? Or do you think that it's kind of a city by city thing where it's different? You have sanctuary cities. Do you think the experience for immigrants is different based on where you are geographically and the help that's available?
Yes, well, I'm in a very blue state where Massachusetts Democrats are generally not the most progressive Democrats, but on the issue of immigration, there's been a fairly strong progressive tendency, I would say, among the Massachusetts Democrats. We are also a sanctuary state. There are many sanctuary cities, and of course, that means many different things. There's no one strict definition, but on the other hand, cities that have identified themselves as sanctuary cities, and in particular, cities and states where local regulation, whether at the state level or at the city level, prohibits or discourages law enforcement agencies from enforcing federal immigration law, are specifically being targeted by the Trump administration now. And, that started on day one when he said, we're going after Chicago because Chicago is a sanctuary city and we're going to show them that we can't do it, that they can't do it. So, again, there is going to be backlash to anything that we do. And that's why I feel like such a big piece of this is that we have to be stronger.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Avi. Oh, I guess I have to follow up on that. What is stronger? Quickly, how can we be stronger?
Well, education. We have to reach beyond our bubbles.
Right.
More
So we gotta
teachings.
start talking to other people, reaching into other communities and getting people on our side. Yeah, I think that's right. Thank you so much, Avi. I appreciate your time.